When I was growing up, I was very interested in architecture. Had a family friend who was an architect, and I visited office all the time. At the same time, as a family, we did a lot of camping, so we spent a lot of time outdoors and in Boy Scouts and things like that. And I was not even aware of the profession of landscape architecture. But when I started to apply to schools, many schools require that you put down that second choice. And I applied to architecture schools and put landscape architecture as my second choice because I learned that it combined these elements of architecture that I enjoyed and the environment and the outdoors that I enjoyed. And through a series of circumstances, I ended up in the landscape architectural program, and I've really never looked back.
Landscape architecture has a misconception of just designing someone's backyard. So when I came here, I found out that landscape architecture is anything outside of a building. So we really get to design experiences for people such as designing parks and designing urban environments, water features, and even streetscapes. One of the projects that we worked on this semester was designing an ecotourism resort on one of the islands in the Keys. So ecotourism is changing the tourist industry to be more sustainable and have more practical practices. So we really worked with the site to create a resort that was eco-friendly.
I came into this program for architecture, like most people do. Landscape is kind of not on the forefront when people think of a design field. But I am a very outdoors person, and I enjoy the environment, and that's a big thing in our culture right now is protecting our environment. So once I was informed about landscape architecture through the first year program, that's when it really clicked to me that this is what I wanted to do.
It didn't really hit me till high school. I took 2 architecture classes with Mr. Du Bois from Concord High School, and I remember our last project we had to build a model, and while everyone's spending days and days building their architecture, shape of the building, I would be outside gathering gravel and like moss, try to do my landscape outside. And so that's when he came up to me and said, "Hey, have you heard of landscape architecture?" And that was the first time I've ever heard this field, and so of course I looked it up and I was like, this is cool, this is what I want to do, and here I am.
My favorite part is like when you first get that spark or that interest in something, you just go with it, because then from there you can really develop your design into something that is great.
This pavilion itself that we're standing under was actually inspired by the students understanding a particular resident that they wanted to accommodate here, the great blue heron. Images of great blue heron landing with their wings spread out and this great grand gesture became what they really wanted to see the pavilion express in an abstract way. And so that was a great opportunity to see the light bulbs go on and the ideas developed, and then to see the structure completed that actually does quite well express the hugeness of the great blue heron landing.
The Cultural Trail in Indianapolis is a great example of landscape architecture. It is a bicycle and pedestrian way that navigates through the city of Indianapolis and connects a lot of the cultural institutions. But it also is an environmental solution in that it was designed to control stormwater runoff in the city.
One of the things I'm really interested in landscape is urban ecology. So this is essentially how people interact with their environment in the urban landscape. So I'm interested in designing things like urban parks, urban farming, and even adding wetlands in cities to combat climate change.
Particularly landscape architects like myself that work in the public sector are very involved in these large overarching issues about how we affect the day-to-day lives of the citizens of our cities or towns or municipalities and our visitors. So there's a component of landscape architecture that will always be about reconfiguring the land for development and private development, and there's high value in that, but I also see the current focus of the profession being a lot more on these broad arching environmental and social issues.
Each year, the whole college goes on a field trip. So you have opportunities to go to places like Seattle. This last year, we just got done going to the Keys in Miami, so that was really fun. And the first year trip is always going to Chicago. And then you also have opportunities to go to conferences that they encourage you to go to. So just recently I got back from the ASLA conference in Chicago, and I was able to meet a lot of professionals and other students that I was able to make great connections with.
The biggest opportunity I've had so far is probably Chicago. I'm from a really small town, and I've never been to a big city. So the field trip for the first year cap, we went to Chicago. And it was just an experience I've never had, and it was exciting seeing actual built landscape architecture. Millennium Park is a great example of a large landscape architecture design. Something that large in a city that was built by landscape architects and designed by landscape architects and that everybody enjoys. It was the largest thing I've ever seen done by a landscape architect. And it's cool to know that I could have that big of an impact too someday on a city.
I think you should study landscape architecture at Ball State because we have dedicated faculty who are interested in teaching and learning and the desire to make this the best landscape architecture program in the world.
The studio culture is something that I love about CAP. You really become very close-knit with everyone here. So when you have projects, you're able to bounce off ideas from each other, and it's just really great to have that extra feedback.
We always talk about the phrase "cat family" here, and it's truly a thing. I spend all day with these people that sometimes school doesn't even feel like school. I feel like I'm just here doing work, and I'm so comfortable with these professors that I don't even feel like I'm in school. We, as students, we see how much they care for us, and it just makes us want to push even harder to do better on projects.
With the focus of our nation and world on both urbanization and also on environmental issues, from climate change to everything else, the role that landscape architects play with things like green infrastructure, urban planning and design, transportation design, we're really educated and trained to be at the forefront of a lot of these issues that are affecting our nation and world. So I think the future of landscape architecture is really bright.